Hello, everybody. Laba diena visiems. Nice to see you here on our webinar that is devoted to the applicants who are writing proposals for the LIFE program. LIFE program is the European program for environmental and climate action programs. This webinar is our second webinar on our 3-seminar cycle that you will be able to watch here on either lively or recorded in our YouTube channel. Before presenting our speaker, I'd like to say a few words on practicalities, and I'll do that in Lithuanian as most of the applicants who are watching us lively are Lithuanians. Sveiki, keletas praktinių detalių. Matome, kad keli iš jūsų turite ribotą prieigą prie webinaro ir gali būti, kad seminaro eigoje užstriks įrašas jums, todėl labai prašome, jei turite galimybę pereiti prie Google Chrome, Firefox arba Opera naršyklių, tada jūsų seminaro įrašas bus daug geresnės kokybės ir neužstriks eigoje. Jei ne, tuomet galėsite įrašą vėliau peržiūrėti, nes mes jį atsiųsime kiekvienam užsiregistravusiam. Taip pat galite visados atnaujinti naršyklę spausdami refresh mygtuką. Jei turite kokių nors problemų, galite rašyti mums į chat lietuviškai, čia mes organizatoriai stengsimės operatyviai jums atsakyti. And concerning questions, please write questions in English in the question tab that you see it to the right of the chat. It should be on the right part of your screen or below the screen. So I would present our speaker, Henrik Toremark from Sweco, and give floor to him. Nice to meet you, Henrik.
Hello, thank you very much, Elsa. Nice to meet you all. Yes, so this is our second session out of 3 concerning the LIFE program. Today we will get right into business, except answering a few questions. We'll speak about the logical approach or the logical structure of a project. We'll go into detail with the different project actions, the C forms, and we will speak a little bit more about transferability and replicability as well as transnationality of a project, as many of you want to hear a little bit more about this. And it fits quite well to bring up when we anyway discuss the project actions. First of all, we have a couple of questions from Tuesday. Some of them you can read in front of you. We had one question concerning local traveling costs and where to write those or how to calculate them. And I wanted to provide a little more thorough answer to this question, because local travels could be for implementation of local action. In this case, the fuel required can be specified under form F6, consumables. In this case, you estimate the total number of kilometers, and based on that, you basically estimate the cost of the fuel to drive. But otherwise, if you're traveling to, say, another city in your region in order to make some dissemination, this will be considered a local travel that goes beyond the local project implementation. In this case, your trip will be considered a travel under form F2. And there are different ways of estimating the cost of it. If you're renting a vehicle, then you estimate the cost of renting a vehicle and as well as the fuel cost in the same way as under form F6. And if you're using your own organization's vehicle, usually you have some internal rules that are governing how much your department is paying for using it for a certain number of hours. Please use those numbers. And if such rules do not exist, if you basically have a pool of 2 or 3 cars at your organization that anyone can use however they want, then the LIFE program has provided already an estimation of 0.25 euros per kilometer, which you can bring in as a cost. So still you need to make an estimation of the number of kilometers. Regarding the second question, project management versus overheads, which project management positions can be included under project management costs and which under overhead costs? All the costs that are related directly to staff that are working in the LIFE project, and this could include secretaries that are doing certain administrative tasks, for example, the financial administration, which is directly linked to the project, can be included under form F1, staff costs. General secretaries or any other costs, for example, electricity or buying a lamp to the secretary or to yourself, cannot be included. This will be included under form F7, overhead costs, and will not need to be specified in detail when you're declaring your costs when you're applying for pre-financing or final payment. Third question, this was a question that I could not answer right away, but I've checked it now. Can we include any long-term land lease costs for environmental resource efficiency projects? No, you cannot. Long-term land lease costs are only eligible in nature and biodiversity subprogram. There were also a few other questions. First of all, what if the idea is new and it is not clear yet whether it will become successful at the end of the project? This project wants to try 3 different types of technologies and choose the best one for implementation at broader scale. This is a quite tricky question. As we discussed 2 days ago on Tuesday, LIFE is a very technology-focused program. This means that you should focus at developing one technology or one conceptual solution. This could mean that you're developing a conceptual solution of 3 separate technologies, but I would not say that it's possible to develop 3 parallel technologies that are very similar. In that case, you would probably need to look into another EU-funded program, for example, Horizon 2020, which suits projects that develops technology that has a lower maturity level. But on the other hand, if you want to make it complicated, it could be possible to find 2 organizations in, for example, other countries that have similar environmental problems, so that those 3 players go together, or these 3 organizations apply together, and they all try one solution each, and then they compare the results. I think this would be possible, at least to investigate further, but that would be the only way. So limited possibilities. Next question regarding performance indicators. What if there are no performance indicators that relate to your project in the LIFE performance indicators table, which is provided in the application package? This is a quite complicated question because as in my case, we always look into the specific objectives and the thematic priorities of the LIFE program before we even go into an application process. And if you do so, there will, in 99 out of 100 cases, be a performance indicator that fits your project, at least one. But if we still have this theoretical situation where it is not possible at all, it should be possible to make your own performance indicators. You can see in the performance indicator table that there is some fields that are empty. You could suggest your own performance indicators, although this is perhaps not encouraged, at least from this consultant's point of view. As long as those, when you do so, you should refer to the evaluation guide, and specifically the section 3, the EU added value. And here it says, I will read a little bit, so I'll look down, that as long as it's in line with the specific objectives of the priority areas of the 2 LIFE sub-programs, and in association with European Union environmental policy and legislation, and that this performance indicator is clear, substantial, ambitious, and possible to measure, it could be possible to include it. So this will also give you lots of hassle, but it could be possible. If you want to discuss this further, the person who posted this question, please let me know. Always easier when you have the context more clear. Otherwise, there was also a question regarding performance indicators. You should only basically where to include the different performance indicators. You should only include a performance that is limited to the context covered by the project and nothing beyond that. And with regards to replication, there is one field in the performance indicators table, which is called economic performance, market uptake, and replication. And under that, you can specify how many replications and transfers of your technology or methodology you're expecting during the project, and then 3 or 5 years after the project. Well, I think this was all. I also had a question about best practice projects. And as I told the person who was asking this, is that I think you could say very much about, not best practice, about close to the market projects. In the application guide on pages 30 to 32, close to the market projects are very well described. Basically, close to the market project means that you have more of a business focus in your proposal. You can include activities that suit a company or suit the company more than, for example, a public organization. So read page 30 to 32 specifically, and then inform me if you have a more specific question. It's quite hard to give a short and concise answer without knowing the specific context. Okay. Minda Ugas, still probably not saying your name right, but you have a question here. Circular economy may be linked with many performance indicators. Should we try to list all of them? Waste, CO2, raw material, forestry, energy, soil, economic indicators. Well, I'm also writing an application at the moment, or a proposal, which has a clear circular economy approach. And I do list them all. I think that's one way of achieving the evaluation criteria of ambitiousness in a proposal. As long as you have a clear baseline, and as long as you will be able to make a clear measurement, a quantified measurement of this performance indicator towards the end of the project, you should definitely include it. But you have to remember that in the C actions monitoring, there has to be a very clear methodology to measure and follow up on your performance indicators. Otherwise, you will get a lower score in the evaluation. Those should be all the questions. We will jump over basically to the C forms today, project outline. You find, well, also today I will not look into more how you navigate around the e-proposal system. Invest a day in this. It's sometimes quite complicated. Today we're looking into the forms C0 and a little bit C2. Excuse me. The logical structure of a problem is usually a quite critical issue when you start writing a proposal. There are many expressions here that are very similar to one another. For example, what is the difference between objective, result, output? And this is one way for European Commission, again, to measure and compare different projects. Therefore, you should keep all of these as short and concise as possible. We will, yeah, I see your new question, Minda August. I will take that up later towards the end. It requires a longer answer. So we will bring up the example again of the wastewater treatment plant and the amazing spectrosonation solution, which is, by the way, not a non-existing solution. This is just an example to get a better understanding. So again, we have the wastewater treatment plants that has problems that they're emitting bad water to the nearby lake where fish are dying. The fishermen are not happy because they don't earn enough money anymore. And they are installing the technology of spectrosonation to kill the pharmaceuticals, the medicine rests in the water through the ozone treatment. And this is a very energy efficient method. So here comes a quite complicated table, but this is also how things make sense, how you can, if you bring it into Excel or just the table, you will be able to get a logical flow through the project, looking at it this way. So first of all, like we talked quite much about yesterday, what is the targeted environmental problem? And we have already concluded that the environmental problem here is the deterioration of maritime ecosystems where the fish die. But we need to be thorough in our problem formulation. Do we know everything? Do we have all the baseline data? For example, do these pharmaceuticals from old people's use of antibiotics harm other ecosystems too? Or is it only the fish that die? No, we realize that also there are living mussels that are very sensitive to the pharmaceuticals in this river before it floats out to the lake. Secondly, does the ozone treatment, the technology, does it provide other benefits? Are there other pollutants that are removed by using this technology? Is it, well, we assume that it has actually been tested in pilot scale in Germany before, we realize. And this fits very well. Then we can look at their results, since that was also an EU-funded project, and therefore all the documentation is open. In the best of worlds, that seldomly happen, and then you have to dig deeper. When we know the full problem, we will be able to look into, again, the guidelines for applicants for the different programs. And then we search the specific objectives of the LIFE program, especially sub-program environment resource efficiency. And we will look into the thematic priorities. And on page 33, we realize that there is a thematic priority that is called water, fits us, water industry. Sounds pretty strange, but still this is water industry. Then they mean also the public wastewater treatment sector. And then there is half a page of text, but we can bring out a very small piece of these, the most important for us, and that is actually on-site procedures and control processes to diminish and eliminate discharges of emerging pollutants, which includes pharmaceuticals and pathogens, which also happens to be cleaned away by this amazing spectro ozonation solution. So we have the thematic priority ready. And then we have to think, what is the objective of our project? Well, it has two, or in the LIFE context, it needs to have two at least major objectives, although we have to package it into one overall objective. First of all, for us, the only thing we actually care about, we are a municipal wastewater treatment plant. And basically, we want to have some investments into our wastewater treatment plant. We don't want to increase the charges for our consumers too much, because then we might actually lose the next elections. So our idea is to get some extra investment funds, as well as, of course, save our fishermen and indirectly the fish. Our municipal ecologist is more eager about saving the fish, but we usually don't listen so much to him or her. Secondly, we realized to make this more suitable in the EU project context, we need to enhance the overall knowledge among municipalities around our lake and around Europe on how to apply energy efficient technologies to remove pharmaceuticals, and through this imply positive effects or impacts on the maritime ecosystems. So we will formulate the overall objective a little bit diffuse somehow. So this fits into many different municipalities' problems. So we call it develop energy efficient ozone treatment for removal of pharmaceuticals and simultaneously strengthen the downstream ecosystems, or perhaps just ecosystems. And then we need to have 2 specific objectives, and specific objectives do not need to be limited to 2. It can be 4 or 5, but should still be quite well put together. The specific objectives would be to demonstrate ozone treatment of wastewater that uses spectrometers for dosage. And this is the energy efficient technology solution. But also within the LIFE program, it's important to have a capacity building aspect for municipalities. So we also have a specific objective called enhance knowledge on application of energy efficient technologies to remove pharmaceuticals and have positive effects on the maritime ecosystem. So then we have the objectives clear. Objectives is something that it's our ambition from the beginning of the project. Objectives should reflect or should be an estimation of what we want to achieve until the end of the project. But you could call this perhaps more of a vision. The project results, on the other hand, has to very clearly set out exactly what we want to reach to. And project results can be split into mainly 2 parts. Somewhere we have to write the expected result of this project is an energy efficient method to eliminate pharmaceuticals. It looks very much like the specific objectives, but when we go into the depth of project results, we have to first of all look at achievements. And achievements is more of the solution based, that we have basically it's not the product, but somewhere like the overall solution, something also that is broad enough that someone else can develop it further. We don't really put it into the context. We keep it a bit abstract, this achievement, and then we still have the 2 rows. So first of all, we want demonstration of one spectro-ozonation facility in X-Town, in our city. And also we have a communication framework that you can describe either much or not so much. And here we have decided to describe it a little bit more. So the communication framework is in place to raise awareness on pharmaceuticals' impact on maritime ecosystems and methods to mitigate it, present and discuss spectro-ozonation technology among key stakeholders and the public, the citizens. And finally, to facilitate institutionalize the produced methods in other municipalities around the lake in question or elsewhere in the European Union. Looking into the outputs or the deliverables are more tangible products. This is something that is more measurable, basically a document, because this is also something that you have to add to your action descriptions. These are used when you're reporting your project. Your case officer in Brussels will ask you to, so where are your outputs, where are your products? And then you will deliver here, first of all, 1 spectro-ozonation facility eliminating pharmaceuticals emissions. This could also be some sort of commissioning document or installation document. We'll go more into detail. But here you have to specify more measurable, and this becomes more clear when we come to the communication actions. We will deliver 1 communication plan that can be used towards the target groups in all of the European Union, perhaps 1 in Lithuanian and 1 in English. There will be 1 communication package, which we will describe later on, what can be included in that. There will be 1 web page. This is obligatory to have a web page. We will hold at least 4 workshops and 3 public meetings with the citizens. This is quite clear products where we can actually submit the protocol afterwards to our case officer and say, see, we held a meeting, please pay us the money now. And finally, we come down to the performance indicators. And the performance indicators are given, as we have said before. You have to look into the application package and the Excel file, which describes the different project performance indicators. Those should be described on the end of the project, and then again, well, they should be the results should be estimated, or the indicators should be estimated within a period of 3 or 5 years after the end of the project. So it's important to remember that actions should somehow continue after the end of the project too, and that's why you need to write the afterlife plan during the course of the project and so on to explain how it continues. So in our case, we have found a section called Improved Environmental Climate Performance, Reduction of Dangerous Substances. Perfect. This fits us amazingly. And then we put in our substance X, which is a pharmaceutical, and we make an estimation based on how much how we can measure it today to have a baseline measurement, and we realized that we have about 50 kilograms per year of this dangerous substance that is influencing fish that are floating through our plant today untreated. But since we will install the spectrosonation, we will eliminate these. So 50 kilograms per year will be eliminated. That's our goal. So we have 2 process lines, and in the end of the project, we expect half of our water to go through this spectrosonation, or half of the process to go through. This means 50 kilograms, or actually, yeah, oh, wow, no. Yeah. And then we will put it through the whole process, and then maybe we'll double it, we'll make it a bit more efficient, or maybe we'll have a higher or more substances coming in because we expect that pensioners will start use even more medicines in the future. So within 3 years, 120 kilograms. Then also in this case, we should quantify the improved water quality, the annual flow that goes through the plants. And again, in total, 5 million cubic meters of water runs through our plant every year. So in the beginning, we will install the spectrosonation on one of our 2 process lines, half of the plant capacity. And that means in the end of the project, 2.5 million cubic meters will be treated. And then we will connect all the water to the spectrosonation after the end of the project. And this will mean that that all of the 5 million cubic meters of water are treated through the plant. In terms of capacity building, there is one performance indicator called communication, dissemination, and awareness. And there is one sub headline called awareness raising, number of individuals, entities reached or made aware. And since we will have a visiting facility inside our plant so that the citizens can actually come and look how everything works, we expect during the 5 years of the program, we will have 10,000 individuals visiting, and now I've not written it out, but during the 5 coming years after that, we also expect that around 10,000 people will come and visit. So after 5 years of the project, it would be 20,000 people total. I hope this makes it a bit more clear. Again, I would recommend that you put this up in Excel so you get the clear overview. And then you can also include the different project actions in the same Excel. This is a limited example, and you can make it a lot bigger, but it's quite useful. And it's also good, again, to facilitate the communication between the different project partners. It helps to have a clear outline of the project. It's very hard to explain the different of a specific objective and output if you don't have it in front of you and have a quite clear and common understanding of what you talk about. We'll jump on to slide 38 and start to look into the different actions more in detail. As I said on Tuesday, and as many of you probably know, LIFE has a clear division of action structure. So A is preparation actions, B is implementation actions, and those are the main actions of the project. C is monitoring of the performance indicators, very important part. D is the public awareness and dissemination of results, basically what's called communication and dissemination in other EU-funded programs. And E is project management. What I want to emphasize, which is important to do from the beginning, is that if you are the application manager, so to speak, or if a consultant is doing it for you, the consultant will be very clear from the beginning that different partners are responsible for different actions here. And it's quite likely that the coordinator at least holds the responsibility for the B actions, the implementation, because it's usually the coordinator that is carrying out most of the actual installation of equipment or prototypes, as well as the E, the project management, because the partner with the biggest budget is usually the project manager. But then it's possible that 2 associated or 3 associated partners take the overall responsibility for other actions. And this is important because, we jump into the project actions, because when we come into the different actions, there are a number you need to provide quite detailed information, and it's usually the responsible and the implementing partner that knows the best what needs to be done, and who has enough information to describe this as in a quantified, measurable, and relatively simple and understandable way. This might not perhaps seem like a big problem if you're only focusing on the activities that your organization is planning to do. But from my perspective, or if you are inviting a few other partners to your consortium, you will realize that it's very hard to understand what other organizations are doing. They will always be able to explain that better themselves because they do it on an everyday basis. This might sound very logical, but in many cases, it's hard to encourage the partners to invest sufficient time to sufficiently describe what they plan to do in the project. And this is something that you should regulate from the beginning and explain the expectations that you have on the different partners. Otherwise, you will end up with very much work on your own table. And it might be work that you're not very comfortable with writing, or not, that you don't basically have the competence to explain in a good way. So first of all, what do they ask for every action? Basically, if we look into B, implementation actions, you will most likely have sub-actions to that, which you call B1, B2, B3, B4. Those are possible to shuffle when you have entered them into the system. So it's good to enter them in eProposal as soon as possible. And for each and every of those, you need to, first of all, describe the what, how, where, when, and why. It's not so complicated. And in many cases, when we are looking for input from partners in projects that we are writing proposals for, we simply ask them to use these 5 words as headlines in their text. So basically, they need to be able themselves to explain each of these questions. And if they do that in a good way, if they provide a sufficient explanation, usually we have enough input to write a good text. You also need to make certain cost assumptions of the actions. Like we said on Tuesday, to unlock this, to unlock the field, or the text field of cost assumptions, you need to add a budget line, a F-form budget line to this specific action. And then you can explain how you have made the cost assumptions. Again, keep this very simple. Like we said on Tuesday. You need to specify the timetable. This you can do per quarter. And you should also, based on partner input, make an overall timetable so you can see that there's a logical flow in the project. So, for example, that the monitoring doesn't start before the implementation actions are finished, for example. That's quite logical, but sometimes you don't realize that the time plan has not been clearly enough communicated until you put it all together. Also, pictures, very positive. Maps is obligatory, but other simple figures, if you can explain the flow of your method, for example, in a picture, this will help the evaluator understand faster and might even lead to better evaluation. So try to include as much pictures and graphical illustrations as possible. It certainly helps the evaluator to understand. Again, deliverables, the outputs, these should also be specified per action. And finally, the project milestones. And the project milestones is do in a life project, they do not need to be a specific product. They need to be more of a, they should split in different phases in the project. So for example, that the installation phase is over. The deliverable will be that, for example, installation inspection by some authority that needs to look at it before you go to the next phase. And the milestone would be installation phase finished. I think the milestones are for the evaluators to look over the whole project, how it's, if it's logically divided into realistic phases, basically, to see how it's moving forward, to get an overview of the whole process. We can continue to slide 44. And here I've listed some questions. Again, every partner can describe his own planned actions better. And actually, this is quite interesting question that I'll bring up directly from Minda Ugas. How much actions is usual practice from previous projects? There is no usual practice, actually. I was yesterday studying some of the most successful proposals that Sweco has written, and those that actually got the highest evaluation points of all applications at all. And they include a large number of actions for each. In, for example, communication dissemination, I think there was 12 different actions. And I think that if you can motivate having that many actions, and you have an extremely clear headline to each and every of the actions, so that it's almost possible to just read the headlines and understand how the project is built up and how the project is intended to be implemented, this might be very positive. On the other hand, and I will get back to that in implementation, perhaps it's better to use sub actions so that you create, for example, C1. And first of all, you explain the overall setting. And then C1A could be, for example, the procurement of different contracts. C1B would be the installation of them. We'll get back to this, but I would say there is no general practice. Use or try to just be clear to the evaluator. As long as it creates a logical flow and it's easy to understand, then it doesn't really matter. And there is no recommendations from the national contact points or Brussels, at least for Sweden. But the questions that you have in front of you is questions that are very motivated to ask your partners to answer, and perhaps also for yourself to answer. The first questions for action descriptions are basically answering the what, how, where, when, and why questions. And when you're anyway collecting questions, you should also get as much input as possible. We have already said that you need massive input to write the B forms. And this is where you could actually get it. Because if partners start to answer 5 questions, they're usually fine with answering another, 8 questions. So these questions should link to the different fields of the B forms, which we'll talk more about in August, when you hopefully sit on all this massive input that you need to write your application. But the baseline here is that the partners need to understand why they have chosen a specific technology. They need to understand how they will measure it. This is partly covered by the monitoring C action. They need to understand if this technology is applicable in any other place of the European Union. They need to explain very clearly why this measure technology is needed for the location where they are located, or the city or the region or the area. Also, they need to consider already at this point when they're describing the project actions, how they include the local stakeholders, and we'll get back to the target groups. But one thing that LIFE might bite you for in the evaluation is that you haven't brought, for example, local NGOs into question. And those local NGOs can cause a lot of trouble for an ongoing project because they might appeal to the court, different decisions and so on. So you need to have those local stakeholders on your side before you start a project. You also, from the beginning, need to understand how you measure or how you mitigate different risks. For example, if you do climate adaptation measures in Nida, again, what if half of the beach is washed away by this measure, something goes totally wrong? What will you do to mitigate this risk from the beginning? Maybe you will have tested in a very limited area, or you will have some kind of barrier that protects it from the sea from the beginning so that you can test if it really works. Are there any measures or technologies that are controversial? Links back to the local stakeholders. Will the technology be in use after the project? This is quite important. And finally, have you engaged in any other EU-related projects? Because if people have engaged in similar projects, or people or organizations, you will be able to read the reports of these projects and usually get quite good input, which can save you lots of time when you're writing the application. These are good questions to keep on the hand from the beginning already now, before you start describing the C actions and the B forms. Well, C forms and B forms. Okay. We will continue into the specific actions. And here, as I've said before, this is a very contextual question, how or what kind of activities that you are putting into the different actions. It's hard to give general recommendations, but I will try to, at least, to give you an idea of what you could put in. Preparation section. These should be quite limited, but there could be actions that you need to carry out before you start doing the work. For example, the technical design should be ready already before the start of the project. Although you could carry out limited feasibility studies to dimension the implementation activities. I've seen this in former proposals, and that has gone through without even a remark from the evaluator. You can also make baseline analysis. For example, in our wastewater treatment plant, we would want to make analysis of pharmaceuticals in the water before we start the project to have a baseline to compare from. Of course, it's better to do this status quo analysis before you even write the application, because you will get a stronger application. It's usually not so super expensive, but 60%, or in your case, 85% of co-financing helps so much. It might be in, we have said that land lease is not an eligible cost. Nevertheless, you need to have a clear plan with the landowners on if you're using, or if you're carrying out a project on someone else's soil or ground. This should preferably stretch also beyond the project implementation. If you're, for example, are planting trees, it's an advantage if the trees can stand there also, and that you can follow the effects after the project is completed. Of course, required permits is very much encouraged to include in this section. If there are any permits or exemptions from regulations that you need to have to carry out actions, this should be the place to include them. But again, it's preferred if you have all the permits ready before you apply even. Then advice specifications, procurement measures. For example, that you have to investigate, that you need a lawyer to, or some legal expertise at least, to look into legal aspects of your projects that you do not know yet. If something has popped up, this is a quite common thing to put in. It can be, well, a description for the contracts between client and contractor for different, for example, land works. It might be job descriptions to hire the project manager, for example. This is quite good to put in here too. We'll give you a few hours to manage the recruitment, or at least make the recruitment process cheaper. Safety precautions, some documentation on that, fire safety in a building, for example. This might be something that you can include as overhead cost, but if you want to maximize your co-financing, this could be put in here too. And then, of course, to prepare financial issues. For example, the bank guarantee is, at least, even if it sounds quite straightforward, it's usually a quite time-consuming story, because at least local banks in Sweden are not very experienced with making bank guarantees within EU-funded projects and follow a specific template and so on. So usually you spend lots of time on coordinations or basically conflict mitigation with a bank to make sure that you remain a good agreement and that they still agree on it. Some new questions, I see. Good that you keep active. If agreement with landowners is long-term process and quite time-consuming process, is it okay to have it as a basic action? Yes, of course. If it's something that is ongoing in parallel to your implementation actions, use it as a basic action under B. If there will be needed any environmental permits, can that be is one of the basic actions instead of preparation actions? Yeah, it can be. But I mean, you most certainly you need to have the environmental permit before you start implementing the project, and in this sense, it would be logical to put it under preparational actions. But I'm sure that you know best your own project. If you think it fits better under the implementation actions, there is no rule that says that you cannot put it there. It's totally okay. Especially if you put it as a sub action, then it can be done, no problem. The guide for applicants doesn't tell you too much where to put a certain action, as long as they come in a logical and relatively, well, time-wise order, so to speak. Okay, we'll jump over to B, implementation actions. Those should most importantly illustrate the methodology and the costs of the central project activities. And here there are different ways of writing it, but I've proposed one structure. And again, we keep it quite general. First of all, you need an introduction and an overall, well, an introduction of the overall measure it's supposed to say. What are you going to do? Keep this brief, 1 or 2 sentences is actually enough. You need to explain where, the area, and the context. Also keep this relatively brief. Normally you have explained it more in detail in, for example, the environmental problem in the B forms. Yeah, that's the B forms. Then the whys, and this is quite important. The main objectives of doing something. This should be short and concise, but it's not bad if you use more than 2 or 3 lines to be very detailed and clear why you need to do this. This is something that the evaluator will look into much. Then the overall methodology and timeline. This can be explained briefly. how you're planning to carry out the project and when. And then you go into detail with the detail methodology. Here you can go into large detail as long as you keep it logical. And now we get back to the sub actions. And as I said, using sub actions, which would be then, for example, B22, would make it possible to use bold text to show the different stages of the project. And I have, well, you can see B22 or B1A as I put below. I will make an example. And then finally, you have to explain the project results in terms of output. And this is, as we have already said, tangible deliverables or products, something you can put into a letter and send to Brussels, basically, or at least an email. Sometimes they want it original. And then finally, the phases of the project. And this is the milestones. And I know that many of you are interested in some sort of basic setup or outline for the activities. And I have said again that this is hard to answer in general terms. Every project requires a specific, very unique structure that fits it. It's only you usually who know the context best. And therefore, installing equipment, we'll bring the example back from the wastewater treatment plant. And use one activity, and this is implementation activity B1, spectrosonation to eliminate pharmaceuticals, we call it. Very clear, we will, or maybe it could be install spectrosonation to eliminate pharmaceuticals. It's understandable from the headline what we want to do and why we want to do it. And first of all, we describe the overall information, and this would be the introduction of the measures, the area and the context, the main objectives, as well as the timeline. We'll explain this first under B1, the overall information, and then we will go into detail with the detailed methodology. So we would call it, for example, B1A, or B11. You can put this yourself because this will be included simply in this open text field. You're not registering the different sub actions in any specific way, but it creates a good structure. So if you see here, first of all, we do procurement of contracts. After that comes the construction phase. And after that comes the installation and test phase. And then perhaps we have a commissioning phase. Doesn't need to be more complicated than this. And then perhaps we have a B2 phase with another disk filter to reduce microplastics. It's our second technology that we want to include in our wastewater treatment project. I hope that this is clear. Well, if you contact me with more specific questions, perhaps I can help you to suggest at least, or at least review your proposed setup of activities. We have one question from Jurate. In demonstration type of project, preparation of sketches and construction of prototypes should be included in preparatory or implementation action. Well, as we said, the prototypes, it's a bit different because sometimes you need to do some design work, of course, to put it together. But usually the prototype should already be designed before the start of the project. At least the concept of it. But yeah, of course, the detailed design should probably be put into preparatory actions rather than implementation actions. So if you need to do some detailed design of the prototype, put it into preparatory actions. That would be the most logical thing to do. According to application guide, the most correct one too, I believe. I hope that if it's not the answer to your question, please just write another question and I'll try to answer it. Going over to C actions, and this is the monitoring of the performance indicators to ensure that the expected impact is achieved. Here, you better keep it simple. There are some obligatory parts. This is also a good way of including and involving external partners, because either usually if you need to do some monitoring or measurement, maybe you have the competence in-house. Many organizations do not have the competence in-house. They send the analysis to, or they subcontract it basically as C1 monitoring and measurement. But it can also be carried out by a university. University is usually a very good dissemination partner. It's a partner that can help spread the results in conferences, scientific journals. They can also write popular magazine articles. And they're also, at least usually, having a quite close connection to the reality and to actual companies that might be interested in replicating your idea. So involving a university as a monitoring partner is usually not a bad idea. Then the downside is that at least Swedish and German, many European universities need to have their overhead covered. They want 100% plus overhead in financing. And there is always a risk that you have to subsidize them a bit to make them come into the project. But still, this will be cheaper in many cases than subcontracting it and use a PhD rather than subcontracting it to a consultant. So for monitoring actions, not a bad idea to look into external partners. This could also provide some transnationality to the project. As one example, I'm preparing one project now where we can see that there is a lot of expertise in Germany in the field. And also Germany is interested in developing this kind of solutions. So we have merged with a German university or research center at least. And in the beginning of the project, we expect to get input from them, that they're telling us what have they done in the past in Germany, lessons learned basically, that we can use in the implementation of our project. And then towards the end of the project, we hope to be able to deliver a concept that is interesting back to them into Germany. And during the course of the project, the university or the research center will be able to do quite many interesting analysis and measurements on the project that we are building. So it adds value, well, both for us in terms of experience and relatively cheap PhD partner that will carry out some analysis and also that has time to look at neighboring aspects. It's not like a company that would only look at exactly what we put into the contract with them. It provides some flexibility. And it also adds value for the university and for similar organizations in Germany. So it's a quite good solution. Then C2, assessment of socioeconomic impact of project actions on local economy and population. This is obligatory. So either if you think you can carry out this activity yourself, do so, or you can, to a quite low cost, subcontract it to a good technical consultant of any kind. And then C3, this, based on our discussion that we had on Tuesday, it's also possible to include some sort of limited analysis or methodology development so that somewhere that the project takes one step further. For example, you could call it experimental monitoring with a little development aspect. This could be to carry out the life cycle analysis, which is encouraged from life programs side, but then to based on results of the life cycle analysis, to develop or somehow ensure that the whole loop, the circular economy loop, if we're looking into circular economy project, is filled. And if there are any gaps, perhaps we could elaborate on how to overbridge those gaps. if you have such more experimental or development activity, this could provide some more reliability to the project setup. Especially if you call it something fancy like circular economy management or something. I love that.